NASCAR has announced the new changes to the 2024 calendar, and it seems like we are in for quite an interesting shakeup of a season. With the Olympic Games break taking place from July 21st for 2 entire weeks, the return to the calendar as well as the finale have been shifted to other races, and the drivers as well as the fans have mixed feelings about some of the races being dropped off the calendar. NASCAR seems to have favored the concrete tracks much more than the dirt playgrounds, and amid all these changes, one question has arisen. Is this the directive that NASCAR should move towards? Let's start with the basics of the changes, which, although don't start from the very beginning of the calendar, are still noticed very early in the season. For example, the first race will still be at the LA Memorial Coliseum for the third consecutive year, kicking off on the 4th of February at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It has been commonly known that NASCAR wants to start things off with some exhibition races, one that has proved to be quite the competitive one in 2023. But now, just before the Cup Series race begins, it seems like another race will join the calendar. NASCAR has always had a goal to go international in Canada and Mexico, and the second race on the calendar will be held south of the USA. The NASCAR Mexico Series will join the event, and on top of that, there are massive changes regarding the Daytona 500, the legendary gem of the track. Don't worry, NASCAR is not deleting this track from the calendar, as the profits from it, as well as the popularity around it, would definitely kill the sport if they did so, but changes regarding the time schedule of the track's hosting weekend will be applied. Now, there will be 2 drafting tracks back-to-back to open the 2024 championship, with Atlanta Motor Speedway being the second race of the year, and this has led to something that all of the NASCAR fans have more or less anticipated: Auto Club Speedway being removed. Bristol Dirt has joined Auto Club Speedway in its downfall, and the spring race has now returned to the concrete, prompting questions as to whether or not NASCAR is moving in the right direction with moves like this. And although Bristol managed to survive the cut, the race won't be held on Easter Sunday, as that date will now go to Richmond Raceway. Furthermore, Texas Motor Speedway has been removed from the playoffs, and even though it previously opened the round of 12 in 2023, it is now the 9th race of the season, taking place on the 14th of April. The host of the All-Star race, North Wilkesboro Speedway, will go through a repave process before it's ready to host the most legendary race on the calendar for the second consecutive year on the 19th of May. And while there are lots of changes, there is just one addition to the calendar in the form of a new track, the Iowa Speedway, as the sport is looking to make a spectacular return for the first time in this state since 1953, taking place on June 16th. One of the races that created a lot of buzz in 2023 and is looking poised to do the same in 2024 as well is the Chicago Street Course, as the Windy City will be totally buzzing on July 7th. This is the race that actually made Shane Van Gisbergen famous, to the point of him actually securing a seat as a full-time driver in NASCAR in the upcoming season. No question about it, the greatest buzz is created around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval, which is practically the last race before the summer break. Following the Brickyard 400 that takes place on July 21st, NASCAR will be headed in a 2-week summer break that we mentioned earlier in this video, and the return will happen with another prime-time Richmond race on the 11th of August. The next batch of races, however, is where the biggest changes will happen, and one of the biggest shockers is that Daytona International Speedway won't be hosting the regular season finale. Now, the race that served as the first one in the playoffs, the Southern 500 at Darlington, will be the season's finale in 2024, and the race will be held at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on September 1st. But worry not, Daytona hasn't moved that far away, and it will now be held 1 week before Darlington, so we are not really missing that much. And that's it for the regular season. However, playoffs have not been immune to changes as well. The opening round of the playoffs will undergo some serious modifications in the 2024 season, with the addition of Atlanta being the very first race of the drafting doubleheader, with Talladega joining the group as well. Watkins Glen International will participate also with 2 road courses as well, joining the Charlotte Roval in the playoffs for the first time, and immediately following Atlanta in the round of 16. The opening race of the round of 12, one we discussed earlier in this video, the Texas Motor Speedway, will now be replaced with Kansas Speedway, and that will conclude the season remaining unchanged. Again, the Championship 4 finale will be hosted by the Phoenix Raceway, and that has been the way to go ever since 2020, with the final race of the sport taking place on the 10th of November. NASCAR have written an official announcement regarding this matter in which they said, the 2024 NASCAR National Series schedules strike a great balance between visiting many of our traditional tracks that continue to put on a great show and newer locations like our first first Cup race in Iowa, and our highly anticipated return to the streets of Chicago that create bucket list moments and attract new fans to America's leading motorsport. Obviously, NASCAR is in a desperate cry to increase its fan base and bring in new investors to the sport, which should be boosted thanks to the new documentaries that have been introduced to Netflix. But nonetheless, it seems like some of the changes that NASCAR has done have definitely raised some questions, such as the Bristol Dirt Race being removed, even though it keeps both dates as it returns to the concrete. This race does hold a special place in every NASCAR fan's heart, as it was the first time in 70 years that the sport raced on dirt in 2021, when the track was transformed into a half-mile dirt event. The ambitious project has received lots of mixed reviews, with Joey Logano winning the inaugural event, but it seems like NASCAR has decided that the negative effect of the fans is much bigger than the positive one, deciding to scrap the half-mile dirt event and turn it into a full concrete one. On top of that, the entrance of the Iowa Speedway becomes quite a problematic event for NASCAR, as Bob Pockrass slams the idea of the sport to race here for the first time in 70 years. Apart from the Cup Series, drivers will race here in the Xfinity Series race, and while this move has drawn support and praise for the promotion from the fans, some of the insiders like Bob are very unhappy with these changes. Talking about this matter on the podcast Door Bumper Clear, the reporter was very unhappy with the direction NASCAR has taken, as he went on to say, "I would just hate to go there once and say, okay, well now we got Montreal or somewhere in Mexico, got the international race, and they're going to leave it. If they were going to, if it's just a one-year plan, I would have said, hey, just go to Homestead for a second race instead of maybe lifting people's hopes up." It's evident that the Iowa race will serve as quite the experiment, and it could either turn out to be the greatest jackpot NASCAR has hit or one of the biggest disappointments of the sport. Either way, we are going to witness some changes that not every expert accepts are necessary for the sport, and there is this general belief among the analysts that NASCAR should continue running on road courses only and not limit itself to oval layouts. Obviously, the first thing that comes to your mind when you say NASCAR is oval circuits, but this age-old stereotype is what made the sport so unpopular lately, with motorsport categories like Formula One and IndyCar 500 taking the popularity off NASCAR. Ever since the sport's first road course race was introduced at the Linden Airport all the way back in 1954, there have been more than 150 road course races in the Stock Car Series history. However, it is very likely that NASCAR will also try to push the agenda of introducing more street venues, something that saw massive success in Chicago, and a formula that has actually proven to work for the other motorsport categories, such as F1. Be that as it may, the calendar is slowly but surely changing and evolving, and whether we like it or not, that is on us to decide. The sport recognized one thing: they need to evolve and to change the approach to the racing venues, looking at this entire desperate situation, as they are the ones to be blamed for the lack of results. What do you think about the new calendar in 2024? Let us know in the comments below.